Good morning. Today is Tuesday, May the 16th. We hope you're having a great day. I know some of you who have joined us on these videos to watch these videos. Join us to watch these videos. That's the words I wanted to say. Some of you are college-age people who graduated last week, and congratulations on making it to the end of your schooling journey for now. But life is all about learning, taking next steps, following Jesus. Those who will be graduating this weekend, congratulations for that too, and the families involved with that. I hope you learn to celebrate your family well and what God is doing in that place. As always, let's dive into the questions today. We've been talking through all week. Can Jesus make me clean? And I hope it's been impactful to you as it was to me. I enjoyed enjoyed getting to speak to you all on this Sunday about it. First question is this: what kinds of people are avoided today because they are, quote, unclean?
You know, it's a tough question, because I think we could nitpick and talk about this group or that group or that group. I was thinking about it for a second though. I did peek at this before we started here. I think it's a subjective answer though. I think it's really anybody that doesn't agree with me or with you or whoever is answering the question. So if I have a certain worldview and a certain way of thinking about things, and this person has a different idea about lifestyles or about cultures or about this choice or that choice, then that becomes unclean. And I kind of push away because I'm uncomfortable there with it.
I think that it's important to distinguish that we don't use the word unclean usually, right? It's just that we typically in our culture, we don't say unclean. It's like, we usually use the words of like, you are different than me, right? We like to create barriers. And please go with me on this for a second. We do. As human beings, we really like to create barriers. If you don't look like me, think like me, talk like me, lean philosophically like me, you're different, so I want to barrier myself away from you. Because I want to distance myself from you. And that's not what the kingdom of God is about. And so because of that, you are absolutely correct. I think all of us have people that we write off as unclean because they don't think like us, look like us, lean politically like us.
Yeah.
And I think every single one of us has to answer this question differently because it looks different for every single one of us.
It does. And sadly, I think even in the church, in the church in general, not just our church, but in general, we've let the culture kind of seep in a little bit with this, but because we live in a culture that says we crave a society that is tolerant, open-minded, accepting, and all these things. But really what we really mean is, I want a culture that is tolerant, open-minded, accepting of me. But I don't want that for anybody else. Yeah. I reserve the right to say, oh, I don't like that at all. Especially when it comes to, maybe I'm wrong, I think two areas. Gender and sexuality, and politics. And those two areas, I think that's where we draw these unclean and clean lines a lot. Because I want people to accept me and my views, but I want to refuse the right to accept any of theirs. And I think we have to also, while I've said even, I feel myself pushing back on myself, deal with accepting is not always condoning, right? We can accept a person, we can care for a person without condoning or affirming the choices they made. But I think Jesus, when he accepted the leper and he touched and embraced the leper, he didn't say leprosy is the way, but he loved the person still, right?
Yeah.
And I think we can do that.
So I guess I have a follow-up question to this one. It's not even written down, but just something for you to wrestle with, and it's one I have to wrestle through with as well, is this. I want you to think about somebody right now that typically irritates you because they don't think like you. Because I guarantee you, in the conversations I've had with people in my life, that if I were to ask this question to you, you started thinking about names of people that you're like, man, I do not get along with them because they vote this way, they think this way, they do this in their household, or they believe in this, or they want to legalize these things. I want you to think about that person. And now what I want you to do is think about, would you be able to sit down with that person and have a not heated debate with them, but a conversation where they left thinking that you don't agree with them, but you love them? Because if I can be honest with you, because I'm throwing myself into this boat as well, the answer is no. 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. I get heated and debated, and if I left the conversation, that person does not like me. And here's the deal. As Jesus followers, we start with Jesus. And Jesus says that all of us are created in his image. And because of that, you need to be able to sit down with people who don't think like you, who don't look like you, who don't talk like you, who don't come from the same viewpoint as you, and be able to walk away. You don't have to agree with them, but you still got to figure out how to love them. And when you get to a point like that, that's when I think you start to see these lines you start drawing disappearing, myself included.
To go back to that real quick, then we can move on a little bit, but if I'm honest, I don't always do it either. I can. You can. I've seen you do it. We can. But for me, when I'm able to have those conversations and walk away knowing that I love this person, they love me and all that, those times only happen because I was intentional about it. And I made sure it happened. And that's the Jesus in us, the Holy Spirit in us making that happen. And I was reminded recently to remember the goal. What's the goal in life? The goal is to help people follow Jesus. And then if I know the goal, my plan, my intention is to live every day with that goal in mind, which makes me more intentional with people, with embracing people that are different than me.
And again, I want to say it, and then I'll move on to the next question. The challenge I'm issuing you, I'm not issuing you a challenge that I've overcome or he's overcome and that we're perfect at, but it's a challenge that we have talked through and we recognize that we struggle with, and I think it's a human thing we struggle with, but God calls us in obedience to overcome through his son. And so what we're just asking you to do is join us in the conversation and join us in the intentionality of being people who are set apart. We're holy to God, but can love people who don't think like us, who can love people who don't act like us, who can love people because, again, we want to point people to Jesus. We want to create bridges for the divine God to invade us and to change lives and to change places. And that only happens when we humble ourselves and we choose to put other people's long-term goal, which is following Jesus, ahead of everything else. So let's talk about that more. If you have questions about that, message us, leave some comments. Again, we want to dialogue about these things because we know they're hard to do. Second question we have is, whom do you know is good at including those others might avoid? Can I point someone out?
Sure, go for it.
One of my favorite examples, I mean, I could point to a lot of people in our church, but I want to point out to a specific family that I've seen over the last decade that have really changed my life and my family's life on how we take care of people, and we just invite people in no matter how messy they are to point them to Jesus, is Brian and Julie Allen. And if you're watching right now and your family's watching, I'm not trying to make you feel weird, but I wanted to say how awesome it is to follow Jesus with people like you, because you've opened your home to people. I know over the last decade people that you've invited in to stay with you because they didn't have a place to stay. The amount of cars you all have fixed on the side of the road just with you and Colton and other people in your family, the amount of things like that you just don't see people as they agree with me or don't agree with me. You guys see people like Jesus does. And it's changed me. And so, again, I could tell stories all day about you. I could tell stories all day about other people in our church, but the first name that came to my mind was you all.
That's a really good name. I've seen the same thing, and we've again, if you're watching, feel awkward if you want to, but be pleased that it's been noticed. Like we talked about the way your family embraces people and all that. That's a really good answer. I was actually thinking my first thought was you, Keenan, and because we have these spiritual gifts to talk about, right? And we talk about leading and about pastoring people, about inviting and being this evangelist kind of person, and that's kind of your personality with things, and you know, I struggled to walk into a room of people and be like, I'm here, how's everybody doing? You do that. And that's, that is, right?
I feel like that's almost word for word what I said today.
I know.
In our lunch.
We had a lunch with the group of people here at the church, and you walked up and you're like, I don't know what you studying, but it's
something
like,
close to that.
I'm here!
What's up, friends?
Yeah. So, I think part of it is just being confident in ourselves, too, like walk in and do that, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that people might reject me, but they're not rejecting me, they're rejecting Jesus ultimately.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think of all these people all the time. I think of people that are in our church family that we love, that we cherish, that we hold on to. The Allens are a good example. The Evans are also a great example of this in the North Heights neighborhood. I could sit here and name names for a long time. but let's learn to love people well.
Yeah. Hey, so we just had a surprise visitor, but we're back to the conversation.
We record these ahead of time.
Yes,
So.
and the promise all year long is that these are one-take things. This really is one take. We just had to kind of pause in the middle for a quick second.
Part 1, this is part 2.
That's it.
Question 3,
All
here
right.
we go. Do you believe that cleanness is more contagious than uncleanness? Can you provide an example? What dangers might this entail? Just off the cuff, if I'm going to be honest with you, I think, generally speaking, uncleanness is more contagious than cleanliness, except when it's Jesus clean, right? Because, I mean, we talk about this in our culture with other things too. I mean, I've seen sermons about this where they've done things where you can dirty water, you can't make it cleaner with, and all these kinds of things. Really, Jesus is the only clean thing. We're all dirty. We're all a mess. And if I'm trying to pour into more of my uncleanness into someone else and hoping that it's clean, it's not going to work. The only cleanliness out there that is contagious, that changes everything, is Jesus.
But with that, we have to be intentional on target with it, with a goal in mind, right?
Yep.
How many times have you seen someone, or we have someone, maybe you've done this, where you enter a group of people because you have the best intention, you want to help them follow Jesus, and so you show up and you want to make sure they know you love them. You don't want to be judgy and come across like you're condemning, so you're just kind of going to be there and love them, and you hang out for a while. And so because you're acting this way, you never talk about Jesus. And then within a few days, a couple weeks, a month or two, that person looks a lot like the junk that's going on in the group. I've seen it so many times, and I tell people, man, go into broken world places, go into dark places in the world, but make sure when you go in, make sure that you are carrying Jesus in front of you like a shield and like a sword to wield, to make sure that's contagious. Otherwise, the uncleanness will overcome what's silent inside of you.
I mean, if you're a parent, I mean, just think about how many conversations you've had. I know I've had conversations with parents in our church watching this, who are now grandparents and stuff, that you were picky about who your kids dated or allowed in as friendships. Why? Because you know that bad company corrupts good character.
Yeah.
It's a principle. It happens. So we have to be careful. But we're also sent into a broken world, which means there is a way to do it, but we have to keep Jesus first, and we can't go alone.
And so I tell people all the time, this real quick here, I tell people, if you're going to go into a broken place, which we all should be, right? That's why it's so vital to thrive in a family of believers. Be a part of an oikos, be a part of a group somewhere, be a part of something so you can come back to that. And you find your grounding and your foundation in Jesus in that group of people. Let that group be the one that influences you on a personal level. And then you go out on a mission with an intentional purpose to share Jesus. And then you come back to be encouraged and to be rested. And then you go back out with a purpose, and you come back like an emissary to the brokenness, and then come back an ambassador to the lost and come back. But if you never come back, if you're just out there somewhere wandering, that's going to be contagious.
Yeah. Last question for today. Is there a person you deliberately avoid that you could have a positive impact on?
Yes. I'm human.
Yep.
You say yes?
Yeah, I'm not going to list names because I could list names forever.
Well, and honestly, there's a chance the person that we're name might watch the video. I don't want that to happen.
That's
and
true.
So I also want to say, if you're watching the video, don't assume it's you, okay?
But it's the reality of being human, right?
Yeah.
It goes back to the first question that really it ties back into that of when I choose to view people as unclean or different from me, I'm automatically going to avoid people because I don't want to be around them. It just happens. And the only way I can overcome that avoidance, the only way I can not avoid people, is when I start singing the way Jesus does. And I'm not perfect at that, which means that I have people that I accidentally do this to.
Yeah. That's a great way to end it right there. It's a great point.
So before we are sent from this place, I have a couple of announcements, and then I would love for you to share very briefly about where we're going on Sunday. But this is one of the first times I get to invite you to do something fun with us, and that is join us Saturday night for church at our North Heights campus in Joplin at 6 o'clock, or you can join us Sunday morning at 8, 9:30, or 11. There are 4 in-person opportunities, 1 digital opportunity. Here's the deal. With all the graduations and things going on, because of all the ways we're meeting this weekend, there is not really an excuse not to gather somewhere.
Yeah.
Just be honest. I'm not trying to be mean about it, but there are opportunities to invest, to be intentional with your faith, with your family's faith, and maybe you have people in town for graduations and stuff that maybe this is the perfect time to invite them to come with you to church. So Adam, with that in mind, why don't you give a sneak peek of where we're going this weekend?
We're asking questions all year long. This weekend is about what impresses Jesus, or is Jesus impressed with me? We're talking about the Roman centurion in the Gospels that actually never met Jesus, but Jesus interacted with his family in a special way. And so we're going to talk about how there is a part of our life that can impress Jesus, but it might not be what you're thinking.
So church, join us this Sunday and Saturday. I got to get used to that.
Yep.
That's a new one. Join us all weekend as we pursue the heart of God together. And as always, until we see each other again, you are sent. Have a great day.